You ever see those people that seem like they have it all? They've got the great career, all the money, the great family, but then you get behind the curtain and things aren't quite what they seem. Well, it's the same way with classes in D&D. And if you were wondering if the Bladesinger does in fact have it all, well, you're in luck. Because behind today's secret door, the Bladesinger Wizard Test Drive. So behind today's secret door, your Bladesinger Wizard Test Drive. This is Secret Door, a channel devoted to in-depth discussion about Dungeons & Dragons, and my name is Matt Morich. All right, I have started a Patreon. If you're interested in supporting the channel, your help would be greatly appreciated and much needed. And many thanks to Marcelo and Doug for your support. The link will be in the pinned comment and in the description. All right, as with any of my videos, especially the test drives, please do check the pinned comment. There could be mistakes that were made that will be listed there and corrections. There may have been something that didn't survive the edit that I still wanted to pass on in terms of information or a thought that I had. Or there may just need to be a clarification that wasn't actually made in the video itself. So any of those things will be in the pinned. Please do check that. And so another point before we get started here really quickly is that I have done a Bladesinger test drive already, but it was for 5th edition. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is that a lot of what I suspect a lot of you were wanting to see in this test drive is a really heavy-duty melee version of a wizard. That video that I did for the Bladesinger did just that. On the thumbnail, I call it a barbarian with brains, but it's just the Bladesinger test drive from 5th edition. Here's why I'm bringing this up. That test drive revolves around one specific spell. That spell is not in the player's handbook anymore. So if your DM is allowing you to use Xanathars for spells, then Shadowblade will be there, and you could use that template and still use some of the ideas that I'm going to post here. But I'm not going to go over Shadowblade at all in this video, because Shadowblade, for those campaigns that are just using the player's handbook and now Faerunes, it would just be kind of a waste to do it that way. Now, the irony, before we get into all of this in mechanics, is that in that previous test drive, how the Bladesinger worked almost necessitated having something like Shadowblade. It also required you to be a Dex character, really, if you wanted to go full melee with it. Now, you've got everything you might want, in the way they've redone the Bladesinger, to make the melee character, but you don't have Shadowblade. So, if you were to put Shadowblade with this Bladesinger and use the kind of archetype that I create for the Bladesinger in that video, then you're really going to be in some business. But since I think a lot of those campaigns are not going to have Shadowblade available to them, I am forced to come to the conclusion, this may sadden a lot of you before we even get started, I don't think this character is very good at melee. It's not to say that you can't do it. You can. Your damage output is going to be at level 5, 6-ish. You're at level 6 in this case. You're going to be in the low 20s with a spell and with a race that adds damage in. If you don't have the spell or that one of those two races, you're going to be down to 17.5, 18 points. Now, in 5th edition, 17 or 18 points, that was average damage. It wasn't what great melee characters were doing, but at least that was, you could hold on to that and say, at least that's average damage. But now martials have gone way up. I mean, way up. And as I've been saying for some time now, spells didn't. Now, I'm not complaining about that by any means. I think it's great that the martials are so much more powerful than they used to be. That's fantastic. But we have to face certain realities here. Now, the great spells for the wizard are still great spells. They're still going to be as effective, especially the control ones. So what I just want to preface here is that this test drive is going to be far less buildish and much more guidish, and a lot of my test drives lately have been that way, but this one may be even a little bit more guidish than normal. Because I know how I would want to play a Bladesinger. I don't know if that's going to be the most popular pick for a lot of you, and I don't want you to waste your time. Now, I certainly think that my version, how I would approach it, is the best way to approach it. But that's not going to be for everybody. And part of this is about you get a certain image in your head and you want that specific image. I don't get that evocative feel myself with the Bladesinger. I just look at the mechanics for this particular class. So with this particular class, for example, you're going to get a bonus to your armor class. Great. This is when Bladesong is active. You're going to get a bonus to your armor class. That's fantastic. You're going to get a bonus to your concentration. Now, those two, a significant bonus to your concentration saves. So from my point of view, I'm going to have to make less concentration saves because my AC is significantly better than it would be for another wizard. And when I do have to make those concentration saves, I'm getting a huge bonus. That's enough for me to want to pick the Bladesinger and play it as a straight wizard. Forget going into combat, forget all that stuff. I don't care. I would just play it as a control wizard with these two things that I need. The two weaknesses that wizards have. One is a defense, and one in terms of armor class, and the other is having to make concentration saves. You got both of those things covered with this class. So I would just say thank you very much, and the rest of it, I don't need it. I don't care. I can use it when I feel like it. Now, that being said, the wizard's still great. And those two things are so great that you don't need, like if you end up agreeing with me that the Bladesinger is kind of disappointing in terms of its melee capabilities, that doesn't mean that those two things are not worth it. They are. In my opinion, they really, really are. This is a great class, so don't worry about it. Whichever way you end up agreeing with, if you think that it's still worth it to go into melee, great. If you agree with me, great. You're going to have it's going to be a great, great character. Wizards are a fun, fun class to play. So let's get going right away. Let's start with race. And again, we have a kind of pick your category here. If you're worried about doing the melee damage stuff, then you're going to want to consider playing the Goliath or the Dragonborn are going to be the two that are going to have the kinds of yields that they're both going to do about another 2.5 or so points of DPR as we go along. Now, when you're talking about a character that can only get to 22 or 22.5 by having one of those, it shows you just how valuable that is in perspective. So if you don't pick one of those two, your DPR with that spell is going to be about 20. So you just, other than Shadowblade, you don't have the spells that you might really think that you do to do this, but you do have all the other very, very best spells in the game. So Goliath, and if you wanted the damage part, obviously I'm talking about fire. Now, if you were to still want to play a Goliath, Cloud Giant is obviously going to be a great, great pick. It's a very popular pick. I'm sure I don't need to spell that out for you, but getting effectively a Misty Step that you can use twice a day at level 1 is pretty darn good. And it also isn't going to conflict with spellcasting. So very, very strong pick. But the Goliath I'm referring to for the damage is, of course, the Fire Giant. But in terms of race, you could pick just about anything and it would be fine. Obviously, with a human, you're going to have another origin feat available to you. And with the Fey runes, we do get a whole bunch of extra origin feats, and that's nice. Halfling, it should be noted, even as a melee character, it does get some value. Of course, having that reroll of any 1 on any D20 test is really, really nice. That's going to help with concentration saves as well. You're not really going to need to worry about your concentration saves. If you go with the first option that I'm going to go in here, you're never going to fail a concentration save with this character. That's a really nice bonus. So for stats, I don't really care too much. I mean, I would probably, with this character, obviously you want a max intelligence, so you put a 15 in intelligence. I would say a 15 in dexterity as well, and a 14 in con, a 10 in wisdom, and dump your intelligence, or dump your charisma and your strength. So you would have a 17 intelligence and a 16 dexterity. I think that's probably your best bet overall for your origin feat. Not a huge shock here. I would definitely go with alert. And at first level, we're going to get spellcasting, we're going to get arcane recovery, and ritual adept. Now we're going to get 6 spells in our spell book, And we're going to want to be taking Sleep, of course, Shield, of course, Find Familiar, of course. 3 of the best first level spells in the game. What you take after that is where things kind of get interesting. Now, I think Detect Magic, it's a ritual, a very, very important spell in Dungeons & Dragons. I think you definitely want to take that. I'm a fan of Comprehend Languages. I would want to take that. But what I'm normally not a fan of is damage spells. Never been a big fan. Becoming a less and less of a damage spell fan particularly in this edition. But you might want to take one, because when you get to level 4, you're going to have the opportunity to be casting, and you may be wanting to get single targets. When I say damage, normally I would say grab Burning Hands or Thunder Wave, and those are the ones that I would take. But I think you might want to take one of those if that's really how you like to play the game. Don't let me color this too much for you. I at first level, Burning Hands or Thunder Wave can be very, very effective. I'm not a huge fan of Magic Missile. I don't think I've ever recommended it, ever. But you might want to consider Magic Missile or Chromatic Orb in this. You'll see why as we go along. Now, with Arcane Recovery, we're going to get 2 spell slots to begin with. And with Arcane Recovery, we're going to be able to recover half of our character level as a spell level in spell slots that we can recover. So we're going to get 1, which means that we're going to have 3 spells available to us. I'm assuming that we're going to have 3 combats in a day on average, each one averaging about 4 rounds in a combat, with 1 short rest per day. So at first level, how great are you? Well, I mean, the wizard, when the spell works, like with your casting Sleep, if it goes off and it's successful, you win that encounter, more or less. I mean, you're picking a key target, obviously. That character is hosed, more or less. So, or that creature is hosed, more or less. So you're very, very effective. But your effectiveness grows kind of exponentially as you level. But you're not a Bladesinger yet, and that's very important to remember. So your armor class is, a 13 if you have a 16 dex. So you have a 13 AC, very few hit points. You're vulnerable. The priority for your spell casting is always going to be to cast an offensive spell, one that will do the most. And by offense, I don't mean just damage. I mean offense can mean control. So it would be Sleep, or if you took Burning Hands, that could be viable, or Thunder Wave, that could be viable. In almost no case here would I ever want to use something like Magic Missile or Chromatic Orb unless there was a specific circumstance why that would be a great idea. But in general, I wouldn't open with that in round 1. And I would never use Shield unless I absolutely had to, is my real point here. You don't want to actually start using Shield until you have a lot of spell slots. Because, great, you're spending your spell slot to defend yourself. That's fantastic. But you're not doing anything to the enemy of any value if you're burning everything on Shield. Now, at level 2, we get Scholar. Scholar gives you expertise in a variety of skills. I would pick probably between Arcana and Investigation. It just kind of depends on your DM and what your concept for your character is. But Investigation can be a very, very handy, often used skill if your DM uses it a lot. Now, in terms of what spells you should be taking as a level 2 character, I think any kind of ritual should be closely looked at. So we had Comprehend Languages and Detect Magic. There's also Tensor's Floating Disk as a ritual, I believe, and Unseen Servant. Those 2 are valuable spells to have. Now, let me also point out here with Find Familiar. You should be casting that as soon as you get it. You can be setting yourself up with the help action if you took the owl, or I guess you could take the deer these days. But either of them are going to be able to do effectively a flyby with the help action to either give you advantage on a target that you're going to be hitting with, say, I don't know, Firebolt or whatever you're going to be using for your cantrip. One cantrip you may want to be considering is Mind Sliver. Now, some of you who are familiar with the channel may be a bit surprised that I would even utter the words Mind Sliver, because I don't think I've ever recommended Mind Sliver. I'm actually not a great fan of this because I think it's kind of a trap in that it's still your action that you're spending to give one target a penalty to a saving throw. Well, the one that I really want to apply that to is happening in round 1. And I'm not using my round 1 move on Mind Sliver. However, this character will be doing deeper in the turn as you go up in levels. You're going to be doing deeper in the turn spell slot castings, and you're going to have the ability sometimes, not always, but sometimes to be able to cast a cantrip as a reaction. So in those specific circumstances, having something like Mind Sliver be able to go off to set up a casting that's going to happen in the next round could be useful. I don't mind spending my reaction like that, but I don't want to be spending my action on Mind Sliver to wait a full round to be able to cast a spell. I suppose, like, if I know that I have a teammate caster that's going to be hitting them with something, and we're talking about round 2 or beyond, and I'm casting Mind Sliver, sure, I think it's fine. But I would never want to invest overly much in the idea of Mind Sliver. But if you want to take Mind Sliver for this character, I think you can make it work in a number of ways, as I've outlined. But at level 2, you get 3 spell slots now, which means you have, with Arcane Recovery, you'll be able to get to 4. So now you're already beginning to grow just a little bit more. That's a 33% increase in your spell casting in 1 level, so that's pretty nice. And it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And at level 3, you're going to start feeling pretty good. And at level 3, of course, we get Bladesinger. Now, with the Bladesinger, we're going to have the ability to enter a Blade Song. Now, with Blade Song, it's a bonus action to begin it. It lasts a minute. You cannot be wearing armor or wearing a shield. You cannot ever be using a weapon two-handed, and you can't be wielding a two-handed weapon, obviously. You gain a bonus to your armor class. So that bonus is equal to your intelligence modifier. So if you had a 13 before, now you've got a 16 AC once Blade Song is active. In addition, your movement goes up by 10 feet, and you have advantage on acrobatic skill checks. When you attack, you're going to be able to use your intelligence rather than your strength or your dexterity when you're using a melee weapon. And that's both to hit and for damage. That's a big change from how it used to be. You were actually a wizard who was actually a dex character if you really wanted to be doing that. So it's a nice change. And that's the weird part of all this, is that you're fully set up for being far more effective in melee. And the problem is that you don't have Shatterblade. And you don't have access to this. This is one of the real sticking points here, is that your weapons are very limited, and you're not proficient with weapon mastery. So these are all things that the martial characters have that you don't. You're also going to gain that intelligence bonus for your concentration saves, and that's fantastic. So you're getting armor class to hit and concentration saves. That's an enormous suite of things. And like I said, the only two that really matter to me is the armor class. The movement's nice. The armor class, the movement, and the concentration saves. The rest of this is all just, it's nice. It's okay. Those are 2 amazingly powerful things for a wizard. So here at 3rd level, you've got a 16 AC, and that's nice. Oh, and you can use this a number of times per day, equal to your intelligence modifier. And when you use Arcane Recovery, you gain one of those uses back, one of the expended uses back. So you're going to be able to do this right now 4 times a day, which should cover you very, very handily. And of course, that number is just going to grow and grow and grow. So you're really set up very, very nicely. And in addition to all this, you gain proficiency with martial weapons that fit the criteria. Not two-handed, doesn't have the heavy property, that kind of thing. So in general, I would say that you're going to want to always have a rapier or a longsword. There's no reason. You're using your intelligence, so you can use whatever. I said rapier out of habit. You could use whatever you like. That's one-handed. Those 2 just do a D8. But I also think that you're going to want to consider using a whip. You're going to be losing about 1.2 per attack if you're using a whip over the damage you'd be getting with a longsword. But you get reach. And of course, one huge get, aside from everything else that you get with Bladesinger, you're going to get 2nd level spells. Now, you want to grab Web. Web is not only a great control spell, it's a great control spell that can actually hit at later levels, much further in your career. So if you are beginning to get tapped out of spell slots, you could always turn to a 2nd level casting of Web in desperation, and it can actually hit pretty well in higher level encounters. But it's the next spell that's going to be the real catch here. There are 3 spells that you really, really want. You want Mirror Image, you want Magic Weapon, and you want Suggestion. Now, you're going to be able to grab all of them as of next level, so it's not that big of a problem, but what one are you going to play with now is the question. So how much you're going to focus on being a martial character here at level 3 will determine if you take Magic Weapon or Mirror Image for the defensive buff, but I don't think that you're going to get a lot of value out of casting Mirror Image at this level because you're going to want to be dropping Web. And while you only have 2 slots, your Arcane Recovery is going to get you to 3. You also now have 4 first level slots, so you're really beginning to grow in power now. But having said all that, Suggestion is an amazing spell. Misty Step is an amazing spell. There's a lot of great spells here at second level. So just so you don't think that I'm being overly harsh or sarcastic about how bad you are as a DPR creature, if you're going to engage martially, just examine the facts. You're doing +3 to hit in damage, which is what everybody else is doing, but you're using a weapon that's a D8 weapon. That means it's averaging about 7.5 on a hit, and even if you have advantage from your owl, you're hitting at something like about 6.8 or so on average in DPR. That's awful. And that's if you're going into melee. That's awful. If you compare that to what other melee characters are doing here at third level martial melee characters are doing at third level, it's not worth it. Now, if you were to cast Magic Weapon on your weapon, it will go up, sure, but it's not going to even compete. At this level, you really need to be focusing on using Web. It's just the strongest option you have. It's a great option. You should always be embracing the control spells. You're a wizard. So yeah, the other melee martial characters are going to be doing, 14s, 15s, even higher than that here at this level, at level 3. So yeah, the 6.8 just isn't going to make a big difference. And then we get to level 4 and we get our ASI. We also get another second level spell slot. So now we have 3 and we also have 4 first level spell slots. So we're really doing well in terms of spell casting power. So you're going to be able to drop Web now up to 4 times because of Arcane Recovery. So you're going to be able to drop Web once in every encounter. And now you've got an extra second level spell. So did you want to be dropping that into Mirror Image as a defensive buff and just go up and tank after you cast something like Web in round 1? That's viable. You could do that and just be absorbing up hits. Mirror Image is even better now than it used to be, and it was great before. It's got even better. So it's an elite level spell. And so if you just were going up there just to tank, you could. Now here's where it does get interesting though. There's a spell that you should be thinking about taking at this level if you do go with the Whip, because we get our ASI here at 4th level, and I'm going to suggest if you're going to do Martial, you're going to want to take Warcaster. Now, this is one of the problems, is it's investing in something that your subclass is already giving you that's great. You're getting a +4 now to your concentration saves from being a Bladesinger when Bladesong is active. Warcaster is going to give you advantage on those concentration saves. So when I was saying that you were never going to fail a concentration save, this is what I meant. You're going to have advantage with an additional +4. Your average, the overwhelming number of concentration saves you're going to make is a DC 10. So with your +2 to Constitution, +4 from Intelligence for being a Bladesinger, you get +6 and you get advantage. The chances of you missing is very, 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 very small. But you only had a 15% chance to miss without Warcaster. But the problem is, if you go up into melee, you're going to have to make a lot more concentration saves. So if you're going to do melee, I think you have to do Warcaster. And one of the things that I always find to be an aspect of Warcaster that I don't think comes into play very often for casters is the idea that if you do incur an opportunity attack, if you do have the option to do an opportunity attack, you can instead cast a spell that only targets that one creature. So no area of effect spells, but you could do any spell that's targeting that creature. Now, if you have the Whip, let's just talk about your chances of getting an opportunity attack. First of all, that's entirely DM dependent. This is why I don't like going down this road very often, but the Whip changes that slightly. Some DMs are going to incur opportunity attacks all over the place. Some almost never. But most of the time, you're talking about a 5-foot reach, which is 8 squares. But with a whip, you're now affecting 24 squares. That's a staggering difference. From 8 squares to 24. I mean, it sounds like it's just another 5 feet. It's like you doubled. Well, you actually, in terms of area of effect that you're affecting, you tripled it. Now, if you're a Goliath and you go up into your large size creature, then you're affecting 36 squares. You, of course, are occupying 4 of them. So you're affecting 32 squares as a Goliath grown with a whip. So now, even though your DM may not incur opportunity attacks willy-nilly, simply just getting around you, if you're that size with that kind of a range, you might get the opportunity attack just from that alone. An opportunity attack that you might not get otherwise. So because of Warcaster, I think the whip is an interesting idea because we're not worried about doing the damage too much. You might still be doing the attack action and doing even less than your already bad damage, but you're going to be on the flip side being able to pick up casting options. Now, this is a very aggressive playstyle. It's not my cup of tea all the time, but if I were to go this route, I think I would want to think about this. And the nice thing about it is, if you did want to go into melee in this kind of playstyle, you can do it at your leisure. Have a rapier or a longsword and a whip. You can't use them both at the same time, but pick whichever one you think is going to be the best for that scenario. If you want, there's really no upside to the longsword or the rapier other than doing a little bit more extra damage. And that's, of course, good. Damage is good. But having that option to be able to expand your sphere of influence to be able to create more chances for an opportunity attack, when your opportunity attack can be converted into spell casting, it's very aggressive, but it can be very profitable. So with that in mind, one spell you might want to pick up here at 4th level is Blindness Deafness. This is, again, not a spell that I'm a huge proponent of. I'm not saying it's bad, but I don't like single target Saber Suck spells. But if I'm doing it as a reaction, well, that's something else altogether. So there are problems with something like this. What I like about the Blindness Deafness is that it's a control effect that's happening that can piggyback, because it doesn't require concentration. It's piggybacking on whatever you already have going on. So you have web going on, somebody else is running around, and now on your off turn, you're causing them to go blind. Here's the problem, though. While I love that all conceptually, the fact of the matter is, if you do that and they fail, it's their turn. At the very end of that turn, they still get another saving throw, and that could end the condition. But if they did fail, that save happens at the end of their turn. That could completely ruin that turn. That may be enough on the circumstance, in the right circumstances. That may be enough to warrant the use of the spell. That killed their turn. Another less inexpensive option of this would be to use something like Ray of Frost, where if you hit them, their movement is reduced by 10. So they've already committed to moving out of your reach, going to whatever that objective may be. And you hit them with Ray of Frost, and suddenly their movement is reduced and they can't quite get to the target. Or maybe they have to take the dash action to get to that target, but then can't do an action. So Ray of Frost, a spell that I like, but I'm not like head over heels in love with it. But in a circumstance like that, it's such a disruptor. And of course, that's a very cheap alternative compared to Blindness Deafness. And there are certainly a lot of great second level spells. And you don't have to go with the Blindness Deafness at all. This is where you could be using Magic Missile, or you could be using Chromatic Orb. Two spells I normally don't go for. There's also the new Spellfire first level spell that does 2d10 in damage on a hit. So any of those could be very viable. And doing the damage in the off rounds and having the expanded ability to get the opportunity attack via the whip could be enough, theoretically, by being very aggressive with your spellcasting, if you were to be using it for damage spells, could put you up into total damage dealt in DPR. It could put you up into the next or closer to that next category. It really, if you only get one of them in every combat, that's probably all the spell slots you have to be able to burn at this level. But if you got one in a combat like that, it's probably going to bump your DPR another 3 or so. It could be a bit more depending on the spell. Normally speaking, what I would be doing is just casting web and then just playing sort of a very conservative game from that point. If web was successful, if it wasn't successful, I'd be doing something else. But if web was successful, I would just be doing, as a wizard, simple maintenance for the rest of the combat, really. I mean, contributing here and there, doing whatever I can, maximizing the most out of my turns, but not necessarily by using spell slots. In this playstyle, it's much more active, but you can make a lot of mistakes and you're going to be burning a lot of resources. So I just want to keep all these caveats in mind. This is not what I would want to be doing. This is not the playstyle I would want a beginning wizard to go with. However, being a Bladesinger Wizard is a great first-time wizard character because they have higher defenses and they are going to make concentration saves more readily. So if they do make a positional mistake, they don't die for it. But if you do play it aggressively, as I'm suggesting, then you're going to be burning a lot of resources, and that may not be the best call for a beginner. So it just it's going to be very dependent. This is why I have to approach, I think, for the sake of all of you out there that might be clicking on this, I need to approach it from this much more general point of view. And I hope it's still useful. And then we get to level 5 and we get Memorize Spell. This is going to allow you to change out a spell during a short rest that you had prepared, which is an amazingly strong ability for the wizard. The flexibility of the wizard is fantastic. Another reason why wizard is not necessarily so bad for a beginner. Granted, it's a 5th level ability, but we also get our 3rd level spells, which is the big get here. I'm not going to waste a lot of time. We all know what the 2 best spells to take here are. I mean, there are still other really great spells here, but Hypnotic Pattern is what we want. And then because of the nature of how this character plays, I'm going to say take Fireball. Now, if you don't want Fireball, Fireball is great at this level, very impactful at this level, and it will still be useful at later levels. But if you don't want that, there are things like Counterspell that are great. Dispel Magic is a spell that people just don't think about, but they're kind of like 2 sides of the same coin. Counterspell negating a spell before it takes effect, and Dispel Magic negating it after it's already in effect. Those are 2 ones to really pick. Lehman's Tiny Hut is a great spell. It's also a ritual. And there are many others. I mean, there's Fly and all other kinds of... There's just an embarrassment of riches here at this level, as there was at 2nd level. But Hypnotic Pattern is your big get. So now, of course, you get 2 of those slots, and then your Arcane Recovery could get you to 3. But here's where I want you to start entertaining this idea of how you're going to use Arcane Recovery. I think that in the odd levels where you have 2 slots like this, you want to think about grabbing Arcane Recovery to get you to 3 because you want because I think 3 is the average number of combats you're going to do in an adventuring day. You would like to have that option to have the big spell available to you on every single one of those encounters. But you are a character that's going to be burning 1st level spells like crazy, both from shield, and then if you are going to be using the whip with Warcaster and being aggressive in that style, you're going to be just burning a lot of spell slots. So you may find it more useful to be using Arcane Recovery to grab lower level spell slots because you're just going to be using them up. And you're going to be getting a lot more individual spell uses out of that than going for the one big spell. But when you get to the even level, so at level 6, we're going to get 3 3rd level spell slots. So you could throttle back on that, or you could go to 4, use 4 of those spell slots, and then have an extra 3rd level spell slot available to you for something like Counterspell or Fireball or whatever. So it just depends on the playstyle that you want. If I were playing a normal wizard that was just playing very positionally, I'm not going to be burning up all my shields. I feel very good about that. Because I'm just not going to put myself in that kind of a position. And so I would want that 4th spell slot available for 3rd level to toss a Fireball or a Counterspell, or if I took Fly, something like that for utility. Anything like that. I always want to trend to thinking that way. But the Bladesinger is a bit different, and it plays out a bit different. So just play with it and see how it works for you. Do what you need, not what is traditionally done. There is nothing about how the Bladesinger plays, if you play in that style, that is at all traditional for a wizard. So therefore, you need to think about how your spell usage is going to work appropriately. So that's 5th level, great level, obviously a big power tip. Now your character really begins to become dominant. And at level 6, we get our blade singing feature, which is going to be, we're going to get the ability to do extra attack, but one of those attacks could be used to cast a cantrip instead. Now, if we use True Strike, we're going to be getting an extra D8 in damage, so obviously we're going to be doing that. If you did go with Dragonborn, here's where things really begin to turn around for you. Because you can sacrifice your normal attack to do your Dragon Breath weapon and then have your cantrip going for True Strike. So if you were a Fire Goliath or you were a Dragonborn and you had Magic Weapon, the spell, on your weapon and you were using a D8 weapon, you'd be doing about 22 points in DPR. Chop down a couple of points if you went with the whip, but if you did go with the whip, you're theoretically getting a much greater chance to do an opportunity attack, which even if we're talking about a 1st level casting of Magic Missile, that's 10 points, 11 points. That's definitely going to hit. It's almost certainly going to do the damage. I'm not saying I'm the proponent of Magic Missile. I'm just stating that as a baseline. Or if you went with something like Blindness, Deafness, that's going to, be a concentration-free control spell with problems, of course, but a concentration-free control spell, debuff spell, whatever you want to call it, then you're going to be burning up a lot of spell slots. And of course, by this point, if you are Dragonborn, you're also getting concentration-free flight a few times a day, so that's also really, really great. So, and then the Fire Giant could be dropping, those D10s, dropping them on crits to do double. So that's how the Fire Giant's going to be doing its damage. So you have options to be able to get that contribution in. Where you could make up the difference with the Bladesinger is if you went with the whip, it's paradoxical that your DPR could go up. But it only will go up if you're casting spell slots with it. So with those opportunity attacks. So it really is very dependent on the DM and your own ability to manage the situation correctly. Like I've said this many times, how I would play it. And I would, say a beginner should really be embracing this idea. Just take the extra armor class, take the extra movement, take the bonus to your concentration saves and say, thank you very much. And then just play as a wizard and you're going to be great. You're going to, all these, if this, then that, all the stuff that I'm talking about is if you get aggressive. You don't have to get aggressive and be really powerful and have a lot of fun. And then we get to 7th level and we get our 4th level spell slots. We only get 1. With Arcane Recovery, you could get 2. You want to take Polymorph and you want to take Dimension Door. The two of the best spells at 4th level in the entire game. Polymorph can win entire encounters, more or less, by itself, especially from at this level. So from here to 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11, Polymorph is going to have enormous impact. Dimension Door is a fantastic utility spell. I haven't been talking a lot about utility spells, I know. It is one of the great things about playing a wizard, so you do want to be paying some attention to them. One thing you should always be doing as a wizard is just simply expanding your spell book. So beyond just what you get from leveling up, because you have the option as a wizard of acquiring extra spells and putting them in your spell book, you need to be doing that. And then we get to 8th level, and we're going to be just doing a straight up ASI. So we're going with an intelligence of 20, and now we get a second 4th level spell slot, which means with Arcane Recovery, we could get up to 3. So with that 3, you have the option of polymorphing in every combat if you needed to, but you still have those 3 3rd level spells sitting there for you. Now, what are they going to do for you? So because your 1st level spells are going to be pretty much always being used with shield, what you always have to be thinking about is what are your 2nd and your 3rds doing? Your 2nd could be tied up with, say, Mirror Image, devoted just to Mirror Image. At this level, this is how you should be thinking about your resources. So 2nd level could just be Mirror Image, maybe a little utility like something like Suggestion could be an out-of-combat utility spell of great impact. You could have Misty Step, of course, as well. So that is another option of movement for you. You don't have a huge bonus action requirement as a wizard. You do need one to go into Blade Song. And one other note while I'm talking about actions, it is important to note in this playstyle, if you did go for the opportunity attack expansion with the whip, you could easily hose yourself here because you could be using that reaction to cast a spell, and that could be great, and then get attacked and not have shield. Not that you don't have the spell slot for it, you don't have the reaction for it. So it just depends on the circumstance. You need to be very careful with how you're operating. The DM could bait you. He could be handing you that opportunity attack simply to open you up to be vulnerable to getting hit without shield. So there are those kind of things you want to be keeping in balance here. Don't be crazy aggressive, but take the opportunities as you see and judge accordingly. And then we get to 9th level, and you get your 5th level spell slots. And of course, we're going to take Wall of Force. Now, you do get to pick 2, so I'm going to suggest that you take Scrying, because in combat, you're going to use Wall of Force. Out of combat, that 5th level spell can be doing a lot of work for you with Scrying. There are other there's also Arcane Eye from 4th level that you're going to want to be thinking about grabbing. That's an enormously good spell. Just below Polymorph and Dimension Door in its value, just below it. So you want to be thinking about taking Arcane Eye as well. And I said there's a whole battery of 3rd level spells and 2nd level spells that you might want to be thinking about grabbing. But here at 9th level, once you get Wall of Force, and you can cast it twice, even though you've only got the 1 spell slot, because you can, of course, Arcane Recovery it. So that's 2 encounters that you can just nuke, and there's no saving throw. Now, there's things that they can still do, but it gets very narrow very, very fast. Wall of Force is just really, really, really strong. And it will remain strong regardless of what level you end up playing to. This is just an amazingly powerful spell. There are tons of great 5th level spells. The reason I'm picking Scrying is not only is it one of my all-time favorites of 5th level, but it serves an out-of-combat function as well, which is very valuable. Now, at 10th level, you also get another Blade Song feature, and this is a very good one, Song of Defense. So if you take damage, you can sacrifice a spell slot, and you get to mitigate that damage by 5 times the spell slot that you sacrificed. So if you did have Mirror Image up in a combat, that's 3 hits that you're going to be able to soak up with Mirror Image. Then, of course, when that gets to you, it has to go to shield. Has to be able to hit through shield. And then after that, you've got Song of Defense. So you're going to be an extremely resilient wizard. Extremely resilient. This covers up the weaknesses that the class has. Do you want to just take all that and consume all of it by throwing yourself into the middle of melee all the time? I wouldn't. I would play with the melee. I would use it. It's one of the reasons why I like the whip, is I could get back, I could get close to melee, and I could be doing stuff, and I would have the opportunity to do some things. But if I were dead set on playing it the way I would want to play it, which is to not go into melee much at all, at 4th level, I wouldn't take Warcaster. At 4th level, I'd probably take something like Genie Magic. I love that feat. Having an extra casting of anything out of 1st level sorcerer spells every day, 1 casting of it, that's an amazingly good ability. Amazingly good. But so yeah, the Bladesinger is a lot of fun, and I know it was like if this, then that, and blah, 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 blah. I know. I'm sorry. I wanted to give you a bit more of an expanded idea other than what I gave in the first one. If what you want, and you have access to Xanathars, the Barbarian with Brains, I get very detailed about the mechanics of how this, then this, then this, and you just rinse and repeat that. It's a very reliable play style. So yeah, love the Wizard. Always have loved the Wizard. One of my favorite classes. And the Bladesinger, even though I would play it differently than most, it would just play, to me, as just a really heroic wizard. And what's wrong with that? All right. Well, that's all I've got. If you enjoyed the video, please like, please share, please subscribe. And if you're stuck and you don't know where to go, you can always search for a secret door. Until next time, I cast bless on all of you.